Welcome. My name is Sharon Stewart Camps, and I'm your MC for today. Welcome to TEDxColumbiaCollegeSC. I am so excited to see you all, each one of you today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We have 10 inspiring speakers that are going to come to you today, and they got some great words for you. So please listen with your ears, open your heart, and be ready. Can you do that for me? I should have asked for some money if I knew it was going to be that easy. Okay, let me give you a couple housekeeping rules. I only have 3, right? First one, no food or beverage inside the concert hall, okay? Number 2, no flash photography and no video recording. 3, this is the most important. I want you to follow along with us as the speakers come through. So on your badge, you have a QR code. Scan that code so you can get the program. Okay? Was that simple enough? I try to be simple. Now, what I'm going to do, they're going to cue up the TEDx video, and it's going to show you all about the TEDx event and how important it is for us to come together. Y'all ready? Yeah, I just love y'all. All right, I'll be back.
Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
Did y'all miss me? I didn't stay a long time, I don't think. All right. Thank you all for watching the video. Thank you for giving it your undivided attention. As you can see for the program, today we're going to talk about staying connected. Staying connected is very important. Over the past few years with the pandemic, we really wasn't connected like we should be. TEDx is all about connecting people together, communities, and ideas. It's all about us, not as the individual, but us together. We want to have a human connection. The world is so fast and technology, and sometimes we get lost in it. How many times you're like, I've been at my computer for 3-4 hours? And let's not talk about the phone, right? It's in your hand constantly. With TEDx and this theme today, we want to make sure that we stay connected. Staying connected has several ideas, and they are human connection, global connectivity, digital relationships, personal growth and self-discovery, along with being resilient. All right? So now, I'm about to bring up some speakers. Y'all ready? I need some energy. Are y'all ready? That's what I'm talking about. Because they have been working hard and they want to share with you their idea and the reason behind their idea. You're going to hear from 10 different amazing people that have gotten their idea and they wanted to give it to you. so you can relate to it, okay? Our first speaker is Dr. Wendy Harford Platt. She's going to talk about the generations of learning. She's originally from Columbia, South Carolina. Dr. Harford Platt has had a diverse journey. Through trials and tribulations, she never gave up. Through being a single mom, being divorced, still going back to school to making sure that she obtained her doctorate, that's not easy to do, but she did it. Today, her talk will be about the power of education, connecting generations beyond the classroom. Let's give a warm, loud applause for Dr. Wendy Harford Platt.
Hello. Have you ever thought about the way Monday mornings and Friday nights are actually success and failure? No? Let me explain. So let's say you spent your entire weekend because you know you got a great project that you've got to get together and you're going to present on Monday. You've got everything printed, you've got everything color-coded, tabbed, you've got notes in the margins, so you're ready. That means guaranteed success, right? But then we all know Tuesday through Thursday, Friday comes. And Friday is actually capping off your failure. Why? Well, you went to go and print, and it was busted. You bumped into your boss and spilt coffee on him, and you actually planned for the wrong project. What do? Go home, get under the covers, cry a lot, and you just go, wow, could this get any worse? And I know that we prefer one of those over another, but I'm here to tell you happily and unhappily, you're going to get both. You're going to get both in the week. If you're lucky, you'll have them both in the same day. If we, ladies and gentlemen, start to think about success and failure not as one better than the other, but equal parts of a path that we're going on, that takes away a lot of that sting of thinking we're not doing this thing right. You're always doing it right. You're doing it. So when we're looking at it, I feel like most of the times we start out on a learning lesson and we don't realize it's a lesson. Again, let me explain. I'm a teacher. When I was little, my dad taught me how to play checkers. And he said he found out more about me and who I was going to be as a person because I was a loser. Harsh, right, Gen X? But what happened was I lost 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. Now I can count, and I could take it all the way up to 33, but it took 33 times. And I kept thinking, if I'm looking at this right, if I'm studying this right, I will get it. And it was that game that my dad taught me in his wisdom to show me that you're going to play and you're going to lose in games and in life. And once you understand that they're both coming, you're going to be fine. Now, on the 34th time, I won. I beat the man I had been defeated by 33 times. And guess what? I didn't know I won because I didn't know what success looked like. I had gotten so accustomed to losing, I just started setting those checkers up again because I just knew I had not beaten this man. And he went, wait a minute, you won. This is what it looks like. It's quiet sometimes. He said, just, you won. So have you ever had a win that you thought you lost, but when you go back and reflect on it, you actually won? And I would think that when you go back and look at all of the decisions that you've made and you thought you failed, it actually led you to a place better than you thought you were going to be in. That's my challenge to you, is for us to reframe what success looks like and what failure actually is. Have you ever thought that your failed relationships might actually be preparing you how to act in your next ones, how to be better in the next ones? Or have you ever thought, now bear with me, that your financial struggles and setbacks are actually the universe testing whether or not you were paying attention in math class or your patience? They are. And a lot of times I lost. I'm going to get to success. And it was that ability to absorb failure, kind of like a superpower and not be crushed by it, that built up my resilience, my mindset. Now, we're going to put that and we're going to sprinkle it with stubbornness because I refuse to lose. I refuse to end on a loss. And most of the times we quit a moment away from a breath of fresh air success. Two things. Failure's not final, but success is not static. They're equal. They're going to come to you. And you've got to start thinking, what is it that I'm doing that I could change and recalibrate? You're not a loser because you failed. You're a momentary winner because you won. And what do we get from the community of sharing when we share both of them? Because if I only shared when I'm successful, I'm only making connections 10% of the time. But if I share when I'm failing too, I have 100% connections. And to paraphrase Gretzky, you miss 100% of the connections you don't make. Have you ever thought going back to school might be a sign of temporary insanity? Well, I wanted to have my dad checked out when he said I was going back. Because the way my checkbook was set up, the way my bank account was not where it should be, and my schedule, no, I'm not going back to school. But after working and learning, I said, let me take what I've learned from the jobs that I had. I think I can apply it to be a teacher. I had a job as a carpet salesman that retaught me geometry in a way that you can't believe, because when you don't measure a job right and you order too much carpet, you're paying for that. Enough checks with money out from bad math will make you learn it. Also, I had a couple of jobs in the insurance companies taking calls about complaints of what we paid and what we didn't pay, and it helped me develop empathy. The people were calling had valid concerns, fear. They didn't understand something. Got empathy for them. I also got empathy for the people like me answering the phone, because you've got to be like, yes, ma'am, I understand. I'm so sorry. Let me get into this. Both equally valid, both wins and losses. So when my dad said, you're going back to school, aren't you? I said, yeah. And I enrolled and got my English degree from here, Columbia College. And I decided, yeah, I'm going to be a teacher. And my first year, 2004, I failed. I cried in class. They weren't getting it. And I said, but I'm doing everything right. I'm doing it exactly by the book, the way they told me. Guess what? It's not always by the book that they tell you. And when I got home, I said, Dad, I don't know. Maybe I'm just going to go back and be the carpet salesman. He was like, your checkbook, you're still not good at math. Maybe there's something you can go to be a better teacher. Came right back, and I enrolled to get my master's in divergent learning, which is teaching all kinds of kids in several methods. And you know what? Letting the kids know that I failed and I'm a better teacher, and if I'm not doing it right, please tell me, makes me a much more safer environment to make mistakes in, because I need a safe environment to make mistakes in. So then I learned how to get my teaching methods correct, and my dad looked at me. I see your brain is whirling. I was like, how they write curriculum? How do they decide who gets to do what? He was like, well, that you'd need a doctorate of education for that. I was like, hey, checkbook, schedule, kids. He was like, you could do it. You did it before. And I was like, right, wait. Because I had just seen those as regular events. He was like, those were wins you didn't celebrate. You were a full-time working teacher, full-time mom, and you got 2 degrees already. This is a breeze. He lied. It wasn't. It was not. But it was something that if I said, let me go ahead and do this, I can. So I got my bachelor's, got my master's, got my doctor's in curriculum and instruction. Now I know how to write curriculum. I'm insane. I might go back to school. I don't know what for, but I might. So I want also to model for people and kids, learning is lifelong. And it's not just in the classroom, because when I went back for all those programs, my professors, my teachers at the schools that I was with, the working parents, the first-generation students, we were a collection of successes and failures that built what we call a collective wisdom. And if you hadn't experienced the problem, somebody else probably did. Seek ye the collective wisdom. So, okay, I'm gonna be vulnerable with you guys. You seem safe. Have you ever thought that your failed eyelash application, your falsies, would lead to a better classroom environment where kids would trust you even more? Well, I did not. But I saw right when we came back from COVID that everybody's wearing false eyelashes. Now, I'm not one for makeup. This is a lot. This is a lot. And I said, well, I ought to be able to do this. I got a doctorate. You glue it on. And so one day I got the glue, stuck it in there, went on to school, and it was great. First block. Oh, Doc, you look great. I wish you guys see you. Get your eyelashes. Great. Lunch came. I had duty. I was outside. Came back in. Doc, can I come to your desk? Yeah, sure. Yeah, come on up. Hey, did you realize that one of those is diagonally towards your eyebrow? I was like, no, it's not. Oh my God, it is. Did you wait for it to get tacky before you put it on? I was like, no. You glue it. You stick it on before it gets tacky. It gets tacky. No, ma'am, that's not what you do. I was like, oh. She said, now you can pretend that you're yelling at me and we'll step outside at the door and we'll fix this because right now you look crazy. I said, okay. Can I see you outside? Yes, ma'am. Can I bring my bag? Whatever. Get out there, fixed, walked back in. Those who were paying attention noticed that the correction had been made quietly, and I had failed and was helped by one of them. Second one, learn from the kids. I shared that right before we were getting ready to go for Christmas break. What are you going to do, Doc? I'm going to go home and play video games. What you playing? Call of Duty. What? You're 52. You're a grandma. I was like, hey, I was around when the games were invented. They were like, that doesn't make it better. And so well, what level are you on? I was like, what level are you on? 42, 28. What are you on, Doc? 1. What are you doing? Are you reading the map? How are you loading out? Are you paying attention to your surroundings? No, and no. So they emailed me things to practice with, and I went home and practiced over the break. And they were excited. I was excited. Got back. All right, where are you now? Y'all, I'm a solid 1. I'm still 1, but I'm enjoying playing because I enjoy playing sometimes even when I know I'm going to lose because it's the experience. So what I want you guys to take away from this is we can take painful experiences of college dropout, which I was, painful experiences of failing to learn how to balance home and school, failing to do well as a teacher in your first year and crying in front of the kids, which they said to do in the car. And a failure to accept that we are going to be successes and failures cyclically. And if we share when we're successful and we share when we are failing, that takes the stigma away from it, and it builds our collective community, our collective wisdom, and our collective space to grow and be nurtured. So go out, fail, learn from the fail, and be on your way to your win. I'm pulling for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give it up for Dr. Wendy Harford. Clap. How many of us have tried something once and failed? And was like, I'm not doing it anymore. Then you're like, you know what? No, I'm going to do it again. And you fail again. And you do it again, and you fail. But that fourth time you do it, it feels so good, right? I tried that with chess. Chess and checkers are not the same. They're just not. I can play checkers, and I'm pretty good at it. I have no idea about chess. And I think that it is okay to realize that we can't do everything, but what we can do, we are good at it, right? We are good at it, right? That's right. Can't nobody do what you do like you. And that's what makes you good at it. You are the best teacher. You're the best runner in your neighborhood. You're the best golf player. Nobody can do what you do like you do, right? Thank you. Right. All righty. So our next talker is going to come from Angelica Gant, Wealth Creation Unleashed. Angelica is from Birmingham, Alabama. She is an entrepreneur, an investor, an educator, and an inspiring author. Her TEDx talk today is going to discuss our financial journey and how we can create abundance in our life through the art of financial manifestation. We sometimes need to tack on our finances. Sometimes we do good, sometimes we do not so good. But regardless, finances is every day. So let's give a round of applause for my friend, your friend, Angelica Gant.
Thank you. 9,496. 9,496. You may be wondering, what is this number referring to? The number of people, the number of books, the amount of podcasts? 9,496 is referring to time, specifically the number of days. 9,496 equals 26 years. 26 years of me living, learning, failing, and succeeding. Financial manifestation isn't a magic number. It is a power and shift in mindset. It is the process of believing in yourself, visualizing the lifestyle that you want to create, and creating an action plan behind it. Most times when I talk to people about manifesting, they want things to happen instantly. However, financial manifestation isn't about instant gratification. It is not where you're facing financial hardship one day and then becoming financially sound the next day, unless you become a lottery winner. And if that's the case, that's a different TED Talk for a different time. It's about seeing the world of opportunities instead of seeing the world of missed opportunities. It's about believing in yourself, writing down your goals and aspirations, and creating an action plan. This often takes time to develop and show up in your life. But with the right discipline, consistency, and action, you'll be able to reach your goals and aspirations. 2020 was a defining moment for me. I was a recent December 2019 graduate that had big dreams and aspirations, and a magic number. However, reality hit fast when I realized what I thought was a common cold was actually a deadly virus that was coming to take over the world. And as we all know it, it was COVID-19. That magic number quickly disappeared as the world began shutting down and job opportunities began to disappear. However, one of the job opportunities that opened up to me was to become a pizza delivery driver. And that magic number that was not so magical was $7.25. That was the hourly wage of a pizza delivery driver. Before accepting that position, I had a decision to make. Do I accept this position knowing that it doesn't match the original magic number in my head? Or do I let my ego get in the way of me accepting this position? Well, after some journaling and reflecting, I decided to accept this position. And honestly, I'm glad that I did because my world began to change. And let me tell you, during the pandemic, people ate a lot of pizza. I mean, a lot of pizza. But accepting that position was one of the key steps to help me to learn about financial literacy. I knew that I didn't want to be a pizza delivery driver forever, and I had to come up with an exit strategy. 10,000 became the new magic number and goal to reach. Saving that amount of money seemed like a huge hill to climb, considering that I'd started out with no savings, credit card debt, and student loans. However, for me to save and maintain this amount, I knew I had to do something differently, and it started with my mindset. I would begin reading books, listening to podcasts, and researching different concepts on financial literacy, such as budgeting, saving, credit, investing, and debt management. I would even listen to podcasts and audiobooks as I was making my deliveries. So as I was feeding my customers, I was also feeding my mind with positivity and building an abundant mindset. Shifting to this mindset started with a line of questioning. I began asking myself questions and shifting my mindset with, it started with, I can't afford this, to how can I afford this? My mindset also shifted from, I hate this job, but how can I use this job to allow me to get in a better position for tomorrow? Every day, I would come home and I'd write how much money I was making. I would diligently create a habit of knowing where my finances stood. I knew the average amount of money I was making and the average amount of money I was spending. Eventually, I stayed at this job opportunity for a year and a half, and I saved my first ever $10,000. Thank you. This was a proud moment in my journey, but it would not have been possible if I didn't learn the basic concepts of budgeting and saving. Once I became 24, the new magic number became 1 million. I would call my parents one day and I would say, I'll be the first millionaire in our family. To this day, I still believe that. However, as a 26-year-old, understanding what I know now, you need more than just a magic number to become financially sound. You need discipline, consistency, and momentum to take action. Now I call my parents and I say, I am building a wealthy lifestyle. A wealthy lifestyle in the sense that I've developed a mindset that has allowed me to create and live a lifestyle without much worry. Focusing on this mindset allows me to not only think about a magic number, but the people I want to impact, the experiences I want to create, and the information I want to give others to help them on their journey. Because of this, I not only think about a magic number, but also the tools and information I need to help me on my journey. One of the skills I picked up was learning how to invest and trade in the stock market. Learning this skill allowed me to see the world differently. I saw myself not only as a consumer, but also as an investor. Developing this different perspective about money allowed me to create different and new experiences for myself and research and act on the information that I receive. I began pouring information back into my family by teaching my nieces and nephews different concepts about the stock market. I even taught at my alma mater by teaching young professionals these same concepts. And I recently poured information back into the community here at Columbia College by teaching them different concepts about budgeting. 2020 was a hard year for many people, including myself. During this time of fear and frustration, I learned a lot of lessons. To get started on your journey, all you need is the number 60. 60 minutes a week or 60 minutes a day to reflect and take action. Reflecting may look like practicing gratitude, appreciating what you have in the moment. Taking action may look like reading books, listening to podcasts, going back to school, changing careers, or launching a new product or service. The next step in your financial manifestation journey is to make sure that you surround yourself with like-minded individuals. This may look like attending events and conferences, or engaging in conversations such as a TED Talk, following different influencers on social media, and networking. The final step in your financial manifestation journey is to make sure that you take action after reflecting. This will only get you closer to your goals and aspirations. One of the quotes I often hear is that knowledge is powerful, but knowledge is only powerful when you use that information to take action. One of the questions I often ask myself is, what can I do today to leverage myself in a better position for tomorrow? This question allows me to think about the small steps I can take now to help me in my future, such as creating small daily habits. 60 minutes a week for 1 year equals 3,120 minutes. 3,120 minutes to build a mindset and transform your life. Ask yourself, am I ready to start manifesting abundance in my life? If the answer is yes, then you're one step closer to making a yes become reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Angelica. Wow. Because we've been rehearsing this, and I heard her speak 2 weeks ago, and when she talked about making small changes and budgeting, how many of us are on a budget? So proud of y'all. How many of us say that we are going to stick to a budget? I have a budget keeper. That's my husband. He's like, why we keep getting all these boxes coming to the house? During the pandemic, Amazon and I became really close. Like, I just ordering stuff and they bring it to you. Then we had what? We still got Instacart, DoorDash, Uber Eats. It's like, there's so much out there to help you spend money, and you spend more money. But we have to realize saving is very important. So I'm going to try to do better at saving. I'm pretty sure my husband will appreciate me doing better at saving. Maybe. Hopefully. All right. Our next talk is going to come from Connie Johnson. The problem is the solution. From Orangeburg, South Carolina, Connie has been a community advocate for over 20 years. She has hands-on experience with the most vulnerable individuals. She is not afraid to discuss the most delicate issues that's in our community. She is going to talk about the things that we need to focus on to help us stay connected with those who are near and far from us. Let's give applause for Connie Johnson.
It is impossible to be a problem and a solution simultaneously. I come before you today to ask a simple question. Are you a problem or are you a solution? I am the oldest daughter of a divorced mother who taught her children the value of perseverance and compassion. She worked really hard to make sure that we had what we needed. My senior year and first semester of college were a very turbulent time. A few weeks before I graduated high school, my mother announced that she had contracted AIDS from a man she planned to marry. I went off to college, came home for my senior year, and when I came home, I didn't recognize her anymore. She'd gotten so sick so fast. 3 months later, she'd passed away. She passed away. But what happened when my mom passed away was I was absolutely sick from grief. I developed a lot of bad habits in an effort to self-soothe. My zest for life absolutely diminished. I didn't want to do anything, but my aunt insisted that I go to school. As a result, I was actually expelled from not one, but 2 technical colleges. But one thing my aunt did say is, if you're not going to go to school, you're definitely going to go to work. So I went to work here in Columbia at a chemical plant. My mother was one of 7 women in an entire chemical plant, so I followed in her footsteps. There was a woman who worked with me who I believe had been watching me for a while. She was retiring, and she sat me down one day before she retired and said, "What are you doing here?" She went on to explain that I was too smart to spend the next 30 years of my life in a plant working like she did. And she strongly, strongly suggested that I go back to school. In that experience, I heard my mother's voice saying something that she often said, "Finish what you start." So I enrolled in a local HBCU. I was doing really well. I was on the dean's list. I was very much so focused. And I started working with an after-school program. I loved it. It wasn't an easy job, but it was a fulfilling job. On the first day, I was given a pack of snacks, a few coloring books and some crayons, and given the directions to go and teach in the middle of one of the most dangerous neighborhoods here in the city. But like I said, I loved it. I enjoyed watching the young people learning and their hunger to want to know what I knew. And it fed me and it fueled me in the time that I needed it most. One day, I was on campus, and like I said, things were going well. I was on campus, and there was a testing van for HIV/AIDS. I was tested, and I tested positive. So 7 years after my mom's passing, I too was diagnosed with AIDS. It didn't stop me, though. As a matter of fact, it propelled me into wanting to live a more significant and a more efficient life. So I came here to Columbia College, and I enrolled in the Child and Family Studies program here. And I said, I'm going to give this college thing one more time. And so I did that. And when I enrolled here, I started volunteering at the after-school program that's here. It was called Clubhouse. It was started by students from the education department. And so I worked with Clubhouse to get my service learning hours completed. When they were completed, I stayed as a volunteer. A few weeks before I graduated, I was summoned to one of the professor's office and offered the job as program manager. The program had recently gotten a federal grant, and it was going through a major transition. The previous director resigned. I accepted that offer. Accepting that offer challenged me because not only had I worked with after-school programs, I had also kind of worked my way up the ranks from a volunteer to a youth worker to a youth advocate to a senior youth advocate. So it kind of seen how the programs operate as a worker, but not so much as a program manager. But I had ideas. I had a lot of ideas on how to better serve our community. I graduated. One of the grant's major ideas was about family engagement and making sure that the families that we served were involved. So one of the first things I did, this is my staff. My staff was usually made up of about 20 to maybe 25 college women. So it was never a dull moment. So we planned this family night. And from out of nowhere, within the community, there was this skepticism about parents not wanting to be involved in what's happening extracurricular with their children, and parents maybe not wanting to be involved with something, like a literacy night. And so my staff and I, we prepared, and we got the kids excited. And lo and behold, family night happens, and over 100 parents, grandparents, cousins, grandparents, godparents showed up in the name of literacy. Something else happened that night. The fathers, brothers, and uncles who looked something like the scary guys we see on the news who we're supposed to be afraid of, they collected the trash and made sure that those who needed help getting to their cars that night got that help. Those grandmothers who laughed loud, and some of them might have been missing teeth, but they gathered together in the kitchen, rolled up their sleeves, and made sure that the meal that we were going to serve was going to be served right. Those mothers, they gathered together. Some of them might have been wearing their work uniforms, but they gathered together to make a plan to see how they could work together to make sure that their children were safe and had something to do on Fridays, because we operated Monday through Thursday. That night, a village was born. Unfortunately, that grant funding ended 2 years later. I was notified that my contract was not going to be renewed, and so I was stuck trying to figure out what's next for me. I decided that I would apply for a master's program at Loyola University Chicago. It was a social justice and community development program. I was shockingly accepted. So in 2011, with a dorm assignment, a few belongings, and an acceptance letter, I relocated my life to Chicago to investigate why so many of the children that I worked with had poor education, were living in poor housing, and received poor medical care. I also used that opportunity to find my voice. During my second year at Loyola, I had the opportunity to take what was known as the Kenya Immersion course. Honestly, it was a glorified field trip. But it was a field trip that was designed to study what happens when the same social issues that happen in America are addressed in Kenya. My colleagues and I were assigned the task of choosing an issue that we were passionate about, to research it and become the expert of that issue. While we were there, I encountered this woman. Her name is Mary Mathoni Wandiri. She was a social worker who got tired of collecting AIDS orphans. She decided that somehow, some way, there had to be another way. She decided that healthy children come from healthy mothers. She resigned from her position and created a program called Living Positive Kenya. What happened next was beyond her wildest dreams. She started a support group with 5 women. In 4 months, that support group swelled to 45 women. At this point, hundreds of children and women have come through the doors of Living Positive Kenya. I was so fascinated and so impacted by her work, I went back to Living Positive Kenya, not this time for a field trip, but as an intern. While I was there, I learned that true innovation comes from challenges. It's our will to overcome them that's a testament of our power as humans. So I ask you, what if the problem is the solution? What if those that we deem in our social systems, who we tally and we count data as problems, are actually the solution? What if those people that oftentimes are not sitting at tables where decisions are made actually hold the wisdom and the genius needed to not only curtail some of our biggest social issues, but actually end them? Can you imagine a formerly homeless person actually being at the table for policymaking at the Salvation Army, or a formerly incarcerated youth having access to program development for the Department of Juvenile Justice? I suggest that the problem is the solution. One of my favorite writers, Marianne Williamson, says, "It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure." Are you a problem, or are you a solution? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's continue to clap for Connie L. Johnson. It takes a lot of courage to get on stage and share your idea. It takes, I can't even describe a word, to say that you have an incurable disease to a lot of people that may not even know you. So that in itself was just amazing. 99.1% of you showed up for someone here that you know. Rarely do people show up for people that they don't know. We as a community need to get better about just being there for our community. We need to help those who are less fortunate, who you don't even know, because your gesture for showing up for somebody is going to trickle down. I guarantee it. So let's try to be there for someone that you may not know, only because someone that you does know have been there for you. Can we do that? Can we do that? Can we be better? Can we try to, I know it's so hard because you have so much going on. We all do. But sometimes we just need to say, you know what? I am going to help this person. I am going to help her. And sometimes it's just by giving them a book. Pay it forward the way that you can, and you know that that person is going to appreciate you. That's what I ask of each one of you to do today. Let's stay connected in that way, okay? I need y'all to, I need some more okays. Thank you. I know sometimes I act like I'm your mama, but it's okay. Sometimes we need that. We need that. All right. Our next talk is going to come from Matthew Rutin, Beyond Labels. Matthew is a committed, dedicated student that loves to help others. Matthew will go far and beyond to achieve his goals and also help others achieve theirs. Even though he has his own challenges, Matthew is going to talk about how he is living his life not only as a black man, but a black man with autism. Let's give a warm applause for Matthew Rutin.
Okay, so Growing up with a single mother and a grandmother back in Greenville, it was very, let me think. It was very, very new to me, really. I mean, because there were so many things in this world that were just new to me, such as the house I was living in, the people I was staying with. Growing up, I had no idea that I was autistic. I knew that I was different, but I didn't let that affect my childhood. So how I saw my childhood is kind of similar to how, like, an astronaut would visit a planet to study its resources. Picture this. You're on a spaceship traveling to a new planet. You land on the planet, the doors open, and you see a new environment. Everything is different. The ground is different, the sky is different, the environment is different. And you see some items here that are just very interesting. As a scientist, you would analyze these items. You would spend days, weeks, months, and even years studying this object and why it works that way. This can apply to a person on the spectrum as they are interested by anything they find interesting. For me, during my childhood, an object that I found to be very interested and that I became obsessed with even today is cars. I used to play with toy cars when I was little, and I was more obsessed with how the car was structured, how they made the wheels roll, and what the car was like, and how the car was based off of. That I had that hyperfixation or obsession since I was little. So if you would apply the theory of an astronaut to an autistic individual as they explore new environments, that's how it would make a little sense. Now, when I started middle school, I learned a few things about who I am as a person. For one, back then, I didn't really know how to socialize with other kids, whether it was boys or girls, but I did come to a conclusion that I wasn't like other boys. And I always felt that I was different. I kind of felt that I was kind of like maybe a superhero or an individual from another country starting a new life in a new town in a new country, because everybody had to abide by these rules called social norms where you had to follow them. Apparently, in middle school, the popular kids were the most respected people, and from the way I see it when I analyze them, just how they treat others, how they treat me, and how they study, it just gave me the impression that they're not the kind of people that I would respect or want to hang out with. So typically, when you're young, you would need someone to tell you that these aren't the kind of kids that you want to hang out with or to be with. But sometimes people learn that a little later in life. But for me, I learned that when I was maybe 12 or 13 years old. And I was kind of curious to why that is. I thought that was part of my humanity as an autistic person, but it was just because I was a little more advanced for my age. Because growing up, I've always been a rule follower, and I've always taken things seriously. Now, getting on to social communication, I want you to think of a superhero, and any superhero, whether it's Superman or Batman, Wonder Woman or Green Lantern. What those superheroes have in common is that they have two identities. One identity is their civilian identity, where they're known by the public by their first and last name. For instance, Bruce Wayne is known, for instance, Batman is known as Bruce Wayne, his civilian identity, and he has a regular job like everyone else does, and that's who he's referred to when he's not wearing the mask. And his superhero identity, like I just said, is Batman, where he's known as a superhero dressed in a bat superhero suit. How this would apply to an autistic person is Sometimes it can be hard to socialize with other kids. That's why we adapt to this behavioral trait called masking. Masking is where we analyze the other behavior of someone who is viewed as normal, and we try to copy that, person in order to fit in. So basically, applying this to my superhero theory, it's like putting a mask on when you're in public and taking the mask off when you're in the privacy of your home. And one thing about being on the autism spectrum is that we're not afraid to be who we truly are, but sometimes we have to realize that people don't see us the same way that our loved ones see us. So even though it is a lie to yourself to pretend to be someone else, it's a coping mechanism that we do in order to survive in this world, as society can be cruel. One little saying that I had to live by growing up in middle school that was both accurate and sad is that the world wants us to fit in, and to fit in, we have to be like everybody else, and that's sadly true, and that's sad, and that's sad because we want to live in a society where we're not cruelly judged based on how different we are. So my negative experiences in middle school did damage me. It caused me to be quiet and reserved and private in my life. I mean, some people typically are open about every aspect of their life, but that's not me. I tend to keep things just to myself. But when I got to high school, when I started my years of college, I learned how open people were to people on the autism spectrum and to other individuals who are diverse and disabled. And when I started high school, I kind of started to identify with other students who were kind of like me but different. One person I can remember who was a very good influence on me. This person was a member of the LGBTQ community, and this person was spectacular. She was proud of her sexuality. She wasn't burdened by those who didn't accept who she is. And this person even allowed me to ask myself who I am as a person. And in doing so, I learned some things about myself that I didn't really know. For one, I love to write. For one, I love to use creativity to explain my life, like I just did right now. And I even realized that I was a member of the LGBTQ community myself. I decided to become an ally of the community, and I'm even proud to be an asexual person. And that is how, and this applies to my talk, because one thing that didn't make sense to me is just how people interact with one another and how they are like intimate with other people. I mean, just how they show love, how they're affectionate. I mean, because as an autistic individual, I kind of find it hard to show affection. So learning that I was asexual gave me an answer to my feelings as a person. But even though I'm defined by these labels, autistic, Black, and asexual, I don't see these labels as who I am as a person in general. It's just part of who I am. I mean, people have said that I am popular or famous or such since I'm well-liked on campus, but honestly, I'm not like popular or famous. I'm just me, is all. And that's how I choose to see myself. That's why every day when I wake up and I look at myself in the mirror, I don't say, I'm Black, I'm autistic, I'm asexual. I get up and I say, I'm Matthew Rutin. I I am brave, I am strong, and I am kind. And that's what I want people to know me as a person. Because things like social media posts, likes, and materialistic objects like a new car or a new phone, that's stuff that can be easily replaced. But a kind, gentle spirit in life, I mean, you may find only one person who's like that. So, so you may need to go back over everything that you have, and I don't mean all those shoes that you may have in your closet. I would go over the people who have been a positive influence on you, who have made you who you are. And even though this can be hard for a lot of people, you can also try to remember the people who had a negative influence on you, because in a little way, the bullying that I went through in middle school is what impacted my career choice. Initially, I wanted to work as a creative writer and publish my work, but after what happened and realizing I had no support system in the school, I realized that I wanted to work in the counseling field, giving my patients what they may not have in their life is a support system, and that's what I try to do as a peer mentor on campus to the first-year students who come from different states, different countries, and different lifestyles. Because even though all these lifestyles are different from what I went through, I understand it because I understand the emotional mindset that they went through. So that's just why you don't need to live your life by just a label. A label is just part of who you are. I mean, as long as you set your mind, your heart, and your soul to a certain goal in life, you'd be surprised at what you can achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. You know, we all have love languages, right? We all share love, show love in a different way. I recently became a chef. TikTok chef. I got to add that, right? I got to say that first. So, because that makes a difference. So I realized that I love cooking. I think I know my husband loves that I love cooking. And just trying out different recipes. But I also realized that I like for people to eat with me. For people to love that I am showing them love by providing food that I have worked very hard over the stove doing. And I think that's why, as the holidays are coming up, Thanksgiving and Christmas, it's just about being with each other and showing how much you love and care, regardless of the differences, right? Because I love each and every one of you all that's in here. I may not be in love with you, but I love you, right? And you're not going to change that. And so we as people, as a community, need to stay connected, stay together by showing each other that we love them regardless of differences. We may not like them, but we love you, right? Right? Y'all gonna love people? Y'all gonna show love? Y'all gonna love people? Y'all gonna show love? Y'all so nice. All right. Our next speaker is Amanda Ling. Dancing with Ghosts, Stories, and Unearthed Connections and Mysteries. Amanda Ling is a South Carolina dance artist and educator. She is the assistant dance professor and dance program chair right here at Columbia College. She is going to bring forth something very dynamic, and I'm excited to see it, and I know that you all too. So let's give it up for our dance professor, Amanda Ling.
Do you believe in ghosts? Perhaps you're more comfortable with the term spirits. My name is Amanda Ling. I'm a dance artist and educator here at Columbia College, and my creative research has entailed collecting ghost stories from the community and then turning those into dances. Now, I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I have been dancing the majority of my life, but I haven't always had a comfortability with the idea of having ghostly or spiritual encounters. This is something that came in my adult life, I would say. As an adult, I found myself more so embracing the idea of experiencing the unknown spirit realm. And these ideas and my relationship to the spirit world, since I've become a little bit more grounded with it, have helped influence my creativity and my artistry. Now, whether or not you believe in ghosts, you likely have had the experience of either hearing a ghost story or telling a ghost story at some point in your life. This could have been maybe around a campfire, out in the woods with your friends, roasting marshmallows together, or it could have been at a sleepover when you were a child with flashlights trying to scare each other. Or maybe you've gone on vacation and you've gone on a ghost tour to try and find out a little bit more about the city that you're visiting and also to hear about the spiritual realm that exists there in that space. I believe there is a universal aspect to telling ghost stories. They're not just popular pastimes that people share today. The reality is that ghost stories, folklore, superstitions have all been passed down for centuries. And I truly believe in the power of storytelling. As a dance artist, that's essentially what I do. I tell stories through dance. I hear stories that people share with me, and I'm inspired by them, I'm influenced by them, and then I take that and I turn it into a dance. Now, the stories that I tell through dance are not always the most narrative, like literal story. They're a little bit more on the abstract side. But ultimately, I believe there is power in that. Power in communicating your ideas and telling your story or speaking your truth through dance. I also think that ghost stories have a bit of a tie to Southern culture and the Southern experience. I am a native to South Carolina. I was born and raised here, proudly. And I think I have a decent grasp on what it means to be a Southerner. And to me, Southern culture and ghost stories both have a tie to Southern Gothic aesthetic, and the stories and the aesthetic both display this layer of contrast. They often depict both the beautiful and the grotesque. Sometimes they display both the romantic and the dangerous. And when I think about my time growing up here in the South, I'm often reminded of these memories of meeting individuals or having these experiences that dig up or remind me of those layers. There would be times growing up where I would meet someone or go into an experience, and at first glance, things would seem very nice, very kind. There would be a sense of decorum. And then the more I got to know either the person or I got to dig into the motivations behind the experience, I might unearth or reveal something that was a little bit more dark, a little bit unruly, sometimes even a little bit sinister. And I think that juxtaposition and those layers are a part of Southern culture. It also speaks and ties in with the socio-political landscape that exists here in the South. And all of these things, all of the memories and the stories that I have that tie to this idea or this layer, or these layers, have ultimately influenced my creativity. They've made me the artist that I am today. Continuing on this idea of layers, I think that ghost stories also help us understand the layered human experience. I think that all the interviews I've engaged in, now I've engaged in a lot of interviews, I've had a lot of conversations about ghosts and spirits. I started out by having conversations with the dancers that I was working with, and then I spoke to a number of my colleagues, and I met a lot of people out in the community who were willing to share their stories about ghosts in the spirit realm. And all of them also point towards this duality that exists in the human experience. That oftentimes we are a little bit curious and filled with wonder about the idea of what lies beyond, but at the same time, we're mixed with a little bit of tension, fear, or anxiety about the idea of life after death, or what it means to share space with ghostly forms. I think that stories can help us connect to one another. I think a ghost story specifically can also help us understand how we're all human and how we all share similar experiences of confronting, sometimes willingly and sometimes not, the idea of our mortality, the idea of what lies beyond, and the mystery of the unknown. I also think that ghost stories are a way for us to maybe deal with grief, maybe help us process trauma. I think that ghost stories can also help us comfort ourselves and our loved ones when someone passes, when we lose a loved one. It's a way for us to have a connection to them after they leave this plane. And I think that through these ghost stories, we're also able to connect with our ancestors, perhaps people who we never had a chance to meet. And that's what I found through having these interviews and having these conversations with people in our community. There's also the psychological aspect of why people enjoy telling ghost stories, why people enjoy watching scary movies, going to haunted houses, or listening to true crime podcasts. All right, let's be honest with each other. I don't think, this is science, but those experiences often have an exhilarating and thrilling element to them, and they release dopamine in the brain, right? So dopamine is this chemical that helps us feel pleasure and satisfaction, ultimately leading some of us towards enjoyment. And so this isn't for everyone, but a lot of people really do enjoy being scared and having those types of experiences. I've been talking to a number of my colleagues, and I had a really great conversation with Patrick Faulds, who is our technical director of the theater here on campus. And he and I discussed the idea that, well, one, lots of theaters are known to be haunted. It's just kind of a classic theater culture that most theaters have a little bit of a ghostly or spiritual element to them. And we predicted that perhaps this is because creative individuals, performers, and artists are often the people who are really inhabiting those spaces the most. We thought about this and we discussed the idea that maybe that is the reason why ghosts choose those places to be, because oftentimes artists or creative people are a little bit more open to having that experience, and they lean into the idea of having that experience. This light that you see here on stage is called a ghost light. It's a part of theater culture. So if you know anything about what it means to work in a theater or be a performer, most theaters have a light like this. It's typically a standard pole with a bulb on it. Sometimes it has a cage on it, and sometimes it doesn't. But this is something that people do in the theater world as a part of a superstition tied to ghost. So it's called a ghost light because they turn it on after the show is over with and all the performers and stage workers have left, and it's meant to help keep mischievous spirits or ghosts who might cause mayhem in the theater at bay. And so this light also helps light the dance that I made. I was fortunate enough to also become friends with a number of people in our community. I met a man named Bill, and he works at our South Carolina State Library, and he shared a number of books and articles with me about ghost stories and ideas of people who have had these types of encounters. And over numerous cups of coffees, Bill and I talked about some of these ideas. And some of the stories that I found through the books that he lent to me there were these people who gained stock market advice from the whisperings of ghosts. There were people who gained a lot of financial success from hearing these whisperings of people who they believed to be spirits who told them which stocks to invest in, which I thought was interesting. Another one was about Rosemary Brown. This might be a familiar story, but Rosemary Brown is a woman who had a near-death experience, and she claims to have seen the other side. And she also claims to be visited by the ghost or spirits of famous composers. And Rosemary was never one to play the piano or have any musical talents, but after having this experience and these encounters, she magically was able to not only play these amazing symphonies by these renowned composers, but she was also able to play the unwritten versions of them, to play the elements that were missing or the next section of the composition. I think that's pretty cool. Bill also introduced me to his friend, Jane, who lives here in the Columbia community, and she was kind enough to invite me over to her home, a home that has also had a number of spiritual encounters. And while sitting in her dining room, we discussed some stories that she shared with me about hearing china clinking around downstairs when her and her family first moved in, even though they hadn't moved any of their dishes in just yet. And also the fact that she would smell pipe tobacco smoke in the home on a regular basis, and nobody in her family or no one who was coming to work on the house was smoking at all. And so she did some research to find out a little bit about the people who lived in the home before her. And she found out that the people who passed, who used to live there, the woman was really obsessive about her china collection, and the man was notorious for smoking a pipe. All of these stories have helped me make this dance. The dance is called Ghost, Conduit, Shadow, Ether. And each section, it's a series of solos, and each section highlights a different aspect of how we might confront the ghostly world or the spiritual realm. So the first section, titled Conduit, is about the idea of being a medium to a ghost, the idea of maybe having a seance or using a Ouija board to try and communicate with the other side. And the second section, titled Shadow, is about seeing shadows out of your peripheral vision and not being sure if you saw something or not. It's about the idea of feeling like someone's watching you even though you know you're alone, the idea of sensing a presence. And the last section, titled Ether, is about what lies beyond the veil. So some people describe there being a veil between worlds, and that maybe being the liminal space where spirits roam or where they exist. And so the last section is probably the most vague because it's the one that we're kind of investigating what the veil or what the ether maybe exists like. I've had some amazing collaborators to work on this piece with me. I have Chris Johnson here with me. He is our sound designer, and he composed an original score for this piece. Today, the solos that you're going to see are performed by Lane Scott, Diamond Mendez, and Brittany Dickerson. I also want to give a shout out to the dancers who I've worked with along this process. So many dancers have worked with me on this project, and they've been a part of previous iterations of this work. So I want to shout out to Amber Kynard and Vanessa Valdez and Rain Capers, who also performed in Ghost. So without further ado, this is Ghost, Conduit, Shadow, Ether. Let's give them a round of applause. I hope that you all have enjoyed this journey of ghost stories and dance. And I hope that you all find ways to continue accessing the power of storytelling, be that through dance or other forms of art. Again, huge thank you to my collaborators, my colleagues, and the community members who shared their stories with me. And I also hope that the next time that you hear a ghost story, that you keep a sense of wonder about what exists beyond what you can see. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. That was such a different combination, right? But it was a good combination. The same way with spaghetti and chicken. People are like, do you eat that together? It's pretty good. Try it. It is. All righty. So what we're finna do right now is have a 20-minute intermission. So I need everybody back at 2:50. Okay. What time did I say? I just love y'all. 2:50. All right. Go out. There's also food in the reception hall, Goodall Gallery, so you all can take that, go outside, get some fresh air, but be back here at 2:50. Thank you.
Back to the TEDx logo instead of the Columbia College. Welcome to the camp.
Philadelphia had a lot to say about Zaxby's fried.
Lights. Welcome back. Welcome back. Hope you all had enough time to do what you needed to do. How exciting was that first half, right? They were awesome. I mean, it just like flew by. We've been here for 2 hours already. Did it seem like that long? Not to me. You know, I'm up here kind of nervous. If you know me, and most of you all don't, I'm kind of shy. Do I seem kind of shy? Oh. I'm not. I love talking to people. I love to talk. I've been a talker all my life. Like, I used to get notes on my paper. Sean talked too much in class. And my mom would write back, she talks too much at home, too. And I'm 40-ish years old, and I just keep continuing to talk and talk and talk. And I love it. So I'm glad that you all was able to enjoy the first half. The second half is so amazing, equally as good as the first. We got 5 more TEDx speakers coming to you to give you their inspiring, wonderful, phenomenal, amazing ideas that you're definitely going to leave here different. You're going to think about different things. Definitely some things that you're going to discuss when you're at home around your friends and your family. I mean, we all want to stay connected. With COVID, the pandemic, we kind of like, no, don't come over here. The coffee, stay over there, you know. And so we kind of got away from being around people and hearing what other people think. Now, COVID isn't going anywhere, right? However, we're not in that pandemic state that we were. So let's continue to stay connected with each other, meet new people, show love to each other, and just be the best person that you can be. Because I always say, especially since I'm 40 years old now, 40-ish, that I have less years in front of me than I do behind me. So therefore, I need to make sure that I am pushing forward and doing the best that I can do with what I have. So, all right. Our next speaker is Martyr Raven. Is navigating the return to office. As an executive producer, Martyr is a phenomenal storyteller. With the challenges from senior management to encourage remote workers to come back to work, it's very hard. Employees, most of them don't want to come back. But when they do decide to come back into work, they want to have a different environment. Martyr is going to talk to us today about how we can make that return as employers and employees easy so that we can have a better communication and better skills. So let's give a great round of applause for Martyr Raven.
Hi, thank you. Okay. Show of hands. How many of you feel like you are living connected lives? Right? I see some hands out there. We have a lot of ways to connect. Phone, email, text, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. It's gotten so confusing. I'm not even sure what all these platforms are for anymore, right? It's like Facebook is where you catch up with old friends, LinkedIn's for the hustle, and Instagram is the Wild West, right? I don't even know what's going on in that feed anymore. Half of it are like my friends' fabulous lives. Then there are these makeup contouring tips. You know, just trying to get some edge there with a cheekbone. Then I see these small Labrador puppies that never grow more than the size of your hand. And then there are many people who like to tell me that I have between 15 and 20 pounds of stored poop in my body. And we gotta get it out, right? We gotta get the poop out. It's pretty scary. We live in a world where our whole lives can be conducted from the comfort of our home, wearing sweatpants on Zoom. So where does real connection happen, and why is it so valuable? Well, first let's start defining the word. For me, connection means feeling fully seen and heard, living, laughing, loving, dancing, crying, hugging. That's what it means to me. That's engagement. Not trading real-life, face-to-face connection for fistfuls of likes on the internet by people who I don't even speak to anymore from high school, even though they seem to be doing really well, right? Like so well. The acne cleared up, and I mean, they're living their best lives. So I'm happy for them. They're doing great. Our world has gotten so noisy that if you can find true connection, it's like gold. It's crypto. Connection is the new currency. Throughout my career, first as a stand-up comic and then as a producer, there were two places where I felt completely connected to others. One was a stand-up stage, and the other was this place where I went Monday through Friday, every day, and was paid to be there. Now, some of you may have experienced a place like this yourselves. Others of you may have heard about it from your parents. And some of you young ones, you may have streamed shows about it on the internet. It's called The Office. Dun, dun, dun. I know, the big O word. The letters RTO, return to work, have become more dreaded than the letters IRS. Right? Not only have people become super comfortable working from home, many people new to the workforce, welcome, have never been to the office on a regular basis, and they're terrified. Am I allowed to make personal calls? Are you allowed to leave for lunch? Are they going to throw staplers at me? Today, I'm banishing the Sunday scaredies for good. Today, I'm taking back returning to on-site to the office. I'm taking back the fear out of it, because the office is where you can make the greatest connections that change the course of your life. The office is where you can find your own voice and your own identity, make incredible friendships, even possibly find love. Sam and Diane, Jim and Pam, Shrek and Fiona. They didn't meet on Zoom. They met at work. And if you're a boss or manager, I will show you not only how to get your team to show up in person, but be motivated to stay there. And trust me, it's not about forcing them or giving them free coffee. It's about giving them freedom. Freedom to fully live their lives without fear, which will unlock their greatest productivity and creativity. And once you, as an employee, feel that freedom that allows you to exchange ideas, laughter, and energy with your colleagues, work will no longer feel like a prison. Now, I know what you're thinking. Who is this lady? Was she sent by Jeff Bezos or Tim Cook to try to indoctrinate us into the workforce through TEDx talks? No, that's not who I am. I've been an executive producer of television for over 20 years. I've produced and created shows and content for major cable outlets, network streamers, digital platforms. But the thing I'm most proud of is not working with every celebrity from Britney Spears to Beyonce, or introducing the world to the Long Island medium, or convincing John Cena to get slimed at the Kids' Choice Awards. That wasn't very hard. He was like, me first. Love that guy. But what I am most proud of is my rock star go-to team of Avengers, who when I say assemble, they say when and where, and they don't ask for a Zoom link. They want to show up in person. They know that we're going to work hard and play hard. And here's the secret. The connection we have with each other compounds our creativity, opportunity, and quality of execution. By trusting and valuing our team, my product has become more valuable. Connection is the new currency. It wasn't always that way. When I came up as a television producer, you were measured by your grit. And it was okay for your boss to kind of be a jerk. I had used a different word instead of jerk, but the TEDx monitors, they took that out. The TEDx police had to take that out. So just imagine the word, any word, but we're going with jerk. And I had one boss that would walk down the hall with a baseball bat. And when I would be in charge of a project, he would come to my office smacking that bat against his hand. "Don't screw it up, Marta. Don't screw it up, Marta." And I was so terrified of this man and his baseball bat, I would have nightmares. I would have knots in my stomach. And I swore to myself that if I was ever in a position of authority, I would not be that type of boss. And I wasn't. I became a mentor, AKA Aunt Marta, to so many young people coming up, because I would listen to them, encourage them. I not only told our young teammates to sit at the conference room table, once they were sitting there, I asked them what they thought. And when we had downtime, that conference room turned into a circuit workout class. We had one guy doing weights over here, someone was doing sit-ups over here, another guy had a whistle. I'm leading Grapevine from the 80s. Know what I mean? Add a step, kick, just doing whatever we can. Like, why not? It's the conference room. Let's have fun. Our interns competed in the cheese board Olympics. This was fabulous. They competed, and what they were competing for was to get hired and asked back the next summer. So they basically had 40 minutes to scour New York City, come up with the ultimate cheese board. You have no idea what the power of a solid Gouda and a whimsical fig jam can do for your career. Takeaway point right there. That's a golden nugget. Somebody mark that down. And when the demands of real life superseded work life, I made sure that real life took priority. No one was ever scared to ask for a day off if they were sick, or if their kid was sick, or if their mom needed help with the Netflix password, or they just needed a day. And it wasn't because I was this amazing boss. I was human. I had days I left early to go to my kids' events. I went on a trip to the Bahamas with my best friends from high school. And many times I left early to go to my mom's apartment to help her again with the Netflix password. I showed my team that I was human. I connected with them in a real way and let them be human too, because connection is currency. But unlike other currencies, supply and demand don't affect the value of connection. And aside from delivering a great product to my clients, here's what else that currency has bought me. Loyalty, a reputation for being a fun, creative, chill boss, an identity separate from home. And here's what that currency bought my team. Confidence, experience, the leeway to screw it up, and then learn from that screw up without fear. And connection. They were able to make their own connections, which could lead to job offers. Who are you going to connect with? The guy that you sat next to in the meeting that you both joked about something that happened there? Or number 6 box on a Zoom call? Those type of connections do not happen virtually. They happen during the breaths of work. walking to grab lunch together, chatting before a meeting, taking a client out for dinner, and then some epic post-dinner karaoke. We belong to the light, we belong to the thunder. You're too young, ask your parents, Google it, but it's a go-to karaoke. That's bonding. You can't do that from home. So, how do we make this connection happen when bosses and employees are at a standstill? Number one, for bosses, do not force your team to do anything. How about really listening to your team about their concerns about returning to work? One size does not fit all. There has got to be a hybrid solution. Number two, for employees, meet your bosses halfway. Yes, I understand the cost of babysitting, commutes, wanting to be home with your children. But these people are paying you, so at least let them feel heard, understand their pressures, and strive to find a middle ground. And number three, have fun. This is for everyone. Show up with good intentions and with a good attitude, knowing that if you bring that energy, insight, and excitement to where you work, if you can have honest conversations about what works for you, what you need, when do you need to be home, when do you need to be at work, all that can do is compound what you make together. It makes us feel good inside. You don't have the Sunday scareties. You might have heard, by letting your employees grow, your company will grow. Or to say to your employees, you do you. But I like to say, you do you, and let them do them. If you do you and let them do them, you've given your team and yourself the permission to be human. You've given them the opportunity to find real connections at work. And that's a job worth showing up for. Thank you. I did it.
Thank you. Let's thank Martyr Raven again. By a show of hands, how many of you all have a full-time job where you physically go into the office? Okay. Do I have any remote workers here? Retired. Regardless of what you do every day, you either have to love it or you really have to love it. If not, you're wasting your day. So going into the office is good for some people. Working at home is good for others. Do what works for you. And no matter what, take vacation. Take vacation. You have it for a reason. PTO, take it off. And sometimes take a day off just to sit and watch Law and Order SVU. Right? Just like I'm not doing nothing, I'm not working, I'm not going on vacation, I am at home and I'm going to watch Law and Order SVU on USA. And that's a vacation, right? We all need those days where we're like, I'm just chilling. Because when you go on vacation and you had a good time there, when you come back, you still need a day to relax, right? You're like, whew, vacation, I'm back. And if you're like me, I need 2 days to unpack, okay? All right. Thank you all. All right, so our next TEDx talk is Stephen Campello, Embracing Imperfection. Stephen is a weight loss expert. In 2003, he lost 100 pounds when he started running in New York within 3 months. Nice, really nice, right? With more than enough training, he is going to speak how most of us desire to be perfect when all we need to do is be healthy. Let's give a hand for my friend and yours, Stephen Campello.
My name is Stephen Campello, and I am a recovering food addict. And it is this food addiction that led to an eating disorder that almost killed me. About 5 years ago, I woke up in excruciating pain at about 4 in the morning. I want you to imagine the worst stomachache you've ever had in your life, combined with the feeling of pins and needles just sticking you in the abdomen. I thought I was dying, really, really scared. So I jumped in my car and I drove myself to the hospital. As soon as I got there, they took me back and ran some tests. An ultrasound had revealed that my gallbladder was about to rupture. So they scheduled emergency surgery and my gallbladder was removed. I'll never forget when the surgeon walked into my hospital room, just as I was still waking up from the anesthesia, and he looked at me and he goes, "Mr. Campello, I don't think you realize how lucky you are. If you would had waited just 1 or 2 more hours to come to the hospital, your gallbladder would have ruptured and you would be dead." Talk about a life-changing moment. Now, what had led to this gallbladder attack happening was the night before, I had binged on an entire jar of peanut butter, and it was just way too much for my body to handle, and it was the last straw, hence me having a gallbladder attack. Now, ultimately, what had led me to this point in my life was an all-or-nothing mentality I had developed when I started my fitness journey years ago. I believed that in order to be successful on my journey, I had to be disciplined, and that being disciplined meant being perfect. But the truth is, discipline has nothing to do with being perfect. Discipline has to do with being consistent. I was the type of guy where if I felt like I messed up and had one little cookie, then I had to eat the entire package of cookies. This is like getting one flat tire and then deciding, you know what? I think I'm going to go slash my other 3 tires. Doesn't really make much sense, right? But it was this all-or-nothing mentality that had gotten me to this point. Now, I have to take you way back. So I grew up on Long Island, New York, in an Italian home. For those of you who know Italians, we like to eat. And it's this love affair with food that led me to gain close to 100 pounds during my childhood years. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, but I was the only kid that had a weight problem. So I knew from a very early age, my relationship with food was very, very different from the other people. I remember going to kids' birthday parties and wondering, is there going to be enough pizza for seconds or thirds? Am I going to be able to go sneak off and get another brownie? I just always found a lot of pleasure in food from a very, very early age. Now, as I approached 14 years old, I decided, okay, it's time. I don't want to be the fat guy anymore. I was going through some hormonal changes, going through puberty, and it was time to make a change. I was tired of getting picked on, tired of getting bullied, tired of seeing all my friends go on dates with the pretty girls, so it was time to make a change. Now, this was back in 2003, so there was no YouTube, there was no social media. If Google was around, I didn't know it existed, so there was really no reliable source to get information from. So I decided to do what I had always seen in the Rocky movies. Whenever Rocky was getting ready for a fight, he would run. So I said, you know what? That's a great idea. I'm going to start running. And that's exactly what I did. Every single day, I would go for my run. I would put on my Rocky soundtrack. I would play Eye of the Tiger on repeat. And just like Forrest Gump, I was running. Along with running every single day, I put myself on a very restrictive diet consisting of chicken and broccoli. Because I figured, well, how could anyone go wrong with chicken and broccoli? But it was this restrictive way of eating that was actually going to harm me down the road. Now, this plan did work in the short term. I lost about 50 pounds within the first 3 months, and over the coming year, I was down about 100 pounds. So I was really, really happy with that. Now, what most people do when they want to lose weight and start a fitness plan is they restrict their food greatly, but then they want to exercise more, okay? That's equivalent to putting less fuel in your car, but then wanting to drive it more. Well, it's only going to be a matter of time before your car breaks down, right? And that's exactly what I was doing to my own body. I was exercising a lot, but I wasn't giving my body enough food, and my cravings were going through the roof, my hunger hormones were going wild, and it just wasn't very sustainable. The ironic thing is that my binge eating disorder didn't start until I began my weight loss journey. You see, when I was younger, I just loved to eat, so I ate. But I didn't classify foods as good or bad. The National Eating Disorder Association says that the strongest risk factors for binge eating is defined by something called perfectionism. And they say that perfectionism means setting the bar so high for yourself that the second you don't meet that standard, you feel like a failure and you want to self-sabotage. And this is exactly what I was doing. Monday through Friday, I was on my game. I was working out every day. I was doing my running. I was following my restrictive diet. But when the weekend would come, all bets were off. I would eat anything and everything. And typically by Sunday, what would happen is I would feel disgusted with myself, and I just wanted Monday to get here so I can get back on my diet again. This is called the Monday diet. Are any of you familiar with that? Little did I know I was going to be on this journey for the next 15 years. When I turned 15 years old, my family decided to move from New York down to Florida. And my dad got me a job at Gold's Gym. Now, for me, I was in heaven, because at this point in my life, I had just lost about 100 pounds. So I had a lot of loose skin, and I looked like a melted candle. So I said, all right, I got to do something about this. Now I want to build some muscle like Arnold. I want to get strong. I want to become a macho man. So being at Gold's Gym was a great opportunity for me, because there were all these personal trainers and all these coaches. So now I could absorb all this information from them and learn how to build my body. And around this time, I met my first bodybuilding coach. And after working out with him a few times, we decided to get me ready for my first teenage bodybuilding show, which just happened to be 6 months away. So for 6 months, I was all in. I was following this very, very strict diet. I was doing my cardio. I was working out every single day. I had to be ready, because within 6 months, I was going to be standing on a stage just like this in nothing but my Speedo, practically half naked, in front of my friends, family, and hundreds of other strangers. So there was no margin for error. I was fully, fully committed. Leading up to the show, about a few weeks away, I found myself going on the McDonald's website and just staring at the burgers and staring at the fries and imagining holding this burger in my hands and taking a bite out of it. I didn't even care about the show anymore. Oddly enough, as the show got closer, I just wanted it to be over so I can go back to enjoying all of my favorite foods. And as you can imagine, that's exactly what happened. As soon as the bodybuilding show was over, I binged, and I binged really, really hard. I gained about 30 pounds within the first month of the show being over. Now, I still didn't think I had a problem, because I just told myself, well, you know what, Stephen? You just dieted really hard for this show. You know, you depleted yourself, so your body needs these extra calories. It's okay to binge. It's okay to eat a lot more food. So I still didn't really think I had a problem. Years later, my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer and given just 1 year to live. This was something that was really hard on me and my family. And I really didn't know how to process it. So I had done what I always did. I turned to food for comfort and as a distraction. And while my mom was sick for the next year, I binged, and I binged a lot more frequently. I remember listening to a podcast one day, and on this podcast, they were interviewing a former addict. And when they asked him, you know, why did you continue to do the drugs and drink the alcohol when you knew that it was destroying your life? You lost your family, you were losing your career, you were losing relationships. Why did you continue to do it? And he gave one of the most honest answers I ever heard. He goes, you know, even though I knew what I was doing was wrong, I was just looking for that little bit of happiness and that little bit of joy that the high would give me. I was looking for that little bit of happiness at the bottom of a bottle. Even though I knew I was going to regret it, even though I knew that as soon as this was over, I was going to hate myself, I was willing to sacrifice that because I wanted that little bit of joy. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, That's exactly how I feel about food. I know that when I binge, I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm fully aware of that. I know I'm going to hate myself just minutes after I eat all these cookies and raid the pantry. But I had fallen short so many times, and I had binged so many times that I was familiar with the feeling of embarrassment and discomfort and shame and guilt. It really had become the devil that I knew. Unfortunately, my mother did end up passing away, and the binging continued. At this point in my life, I knew that I had a problem, and I had to get a hold of it. Especially having just lost my mom. She was only 52, and 52 years old is way, way too young. And I knew what I was doing to my own health wasn't good. On the outside, I looked fit because I was still following a very restrictive diet, and I was still working out almost every day, but I was still binging. And when I would binge, it would hurt. I knew I was hurting my health. My kidneys would hurt. My gallbladder would hurt, which ultimately had to be removed. It had come down to this all-or-nothing mentality that I had developed. I believed that in order to be perfect, I had to do everything right. And that's actually what stops people from making progress. We call this the paradox of perfection. We think that we have to be perfect with everything we do. But the truth is, perfection is just an illusion. It's something that doesn't even exist, but so many of us strive to achieve this standard of perfection. And I was the one putting all of this pressure on myself. At this point in my life, I had tried a lot of things. I met with therapists and eating disorder counselors, and I knew people that had success with those things, but it didn't work for me. I bought all of the books you can imagine on binge eating and eating disorders, but nothing really seemed to click. And then one day, I just thought to myself, why don't I just change my relationship with food? I'm the one putting all this pressure on myself to be perfect, but again, perfection is something that doesn't even exist. It's just an illusion. We've been taught our entire life that you can't have your cake and eat it too. Well, I am here to tell you that you can, and you should. And that's actually how you get the best results. So today, I want to share a few ways with you that you can move from the idea of trying to be perfect and get on a path to start making more consistent progress. First, you want to set a realistic time frame for yourself. As a full-time fat loss coach, I have hundreds of conversations with people every single year. And my favorite question to ask them is, how long did it take you to gain all this weight? How long did it take you to gain 100 pounds or 50 pounds? Did it happen overnight, or was it a period of years? And of course, their answer is, well, it happened over years, right? I always like to say, no one ever got in shape from having one good meal, and no one ever got fat from having one bad meal, right? It's usually a culmination of the things that we're doing consistently. But yet people want to do these extreme things, and they want to lose the weight overnight, which isn't very realistic. So I always say, give yourself a realistic time frame. You didn't gain the weight overnight, you're not going to lose it overnight. So start setting long-term goals and take all that pressure off of yourself. Secondly, you want to embrace failure. When I first started my fitness journey years ago, I looked at failure as a death sentence. I thought that if I slipped up just a little bit and had a Hershey kiss or had a little piece of candy, that it was all over. I was a failure. I was ruined. But the truth is, failure is part of the process. And even when I begin working with a client today, I always tell them from the very beginning, listen, you're going to fall off track. You're going to fail. We're all human. It happens to all of us. And don't be surprised when it does, because it's going to happen. However, your success will be dictated upon recognizing that you messed up and then course correcting quickly. My most successful clients are the ones that acknowledge that they messed up a little bit, they get back on track, they forget it happened, and now they're moving on. Don't allow one little slip up to become 2 or 3, and now a week or a month has gone by, and you've self-sabotaged and you're back at square one. Embrace failure. It's part of the process. And third, You want to do less and not more. Having been involved in fitness now for close to 20 years, I see it all the time. When people want to start a fitness journey, what do? They want to do a million things at once. They want to go from 0 to 100 miles an hour. They want to cut sugar, cut the bread, cut carbs. They want to do yoga, run 10 miles a day, lift weights. They set the bar so high for themselves, and then by the second or third day, when they can no longer sustain this new lifestyle, they feel like a failure, and they're usually pulling into a McDonald's drive-thru, right? Because they set the bar so high for themselves. You don't have to do that. To be successful on your fitness journey, you just have to do a few things, but do it consistently over time. Get your steps in every day. Go for a walk. Work out 3 to 4 days a week. Follow a well-balanced diet. If you could do these things, but do it consistently, you're going to be way ahead of the game. Before I leave you today, I want you to identify an area of your life where maybe you've been trying to be perfect and setting the bar so high for yourself. And instead of trying to achieve this level of perfection, start aiming for consistent progress. Because it's the little things that we do every single day that create ripples in our life. And these ripples ultimately compound into tidal waves of progress months and years down the road. So stop trying to be perfect and start trying to be consistent, because consistency always compounds. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give a hand for Stephen. I am very consistent. I like cake and cookies and pies and Little Debbie cakes, and I need to do better. I think that we all, when it comes to our bodies, we try to be the best that we can be, yet and still sometimes we fall short. It's definitely okay, because when he says, and we hear it all the time, you can't have your cake and eat it too. What? Sister, what? Who came up with that? So you mean to tell me I can have it, but I really can't have it? If you give me cake and it's my cake, I'm going to eat it. So just don't give me the cake, right? Because no. But we want to make sure that we are taking care of our body, because you only get one. Well, you can buy some more, but most of the time, most of us only get one body to take care of. And we got to make sure that we're doing it the best that we can. All right? Okay. So our next person is Dr. Deshauna Reed, Unlocking Opportunities. Dr. Reed is an educator, author, and campus administrator. She has her own consulting firm. Today, she will speak to us about post-secondary employment for individuals with intellectual and developmental delays. Let's give a hand for Dr. Reed.
Well, hello. You guys are a pretty good-looking audience. And hello to the people who can live stream and see this. Thanks for joining. So, before I get too deep into my talk, I want to ask you all a question. Do you remember high school? Do you remember those 4 years that were kind of fraught with drama, expectations, planning, maybe trying to decide, is college for me? Do I want to just go into the workforce? Do I really just want to go home and take a nap? You remember those years? Think back in particular to your senior year. It was full of excitement, right? You were considering what was going to come next and wondering, where do I rank in this class and who all is actually going to make it? Pretty interesting questions, right? Did you know that in 2021, over 73 million students attended public schools across the United States? According to the National Center for Education Statistics, as of 2021, over 7 million of those students, 15% of all public school students, qualified for and received special education services in accordance with a federal legislation that outlines parameters for how state education agencies are to meet the needs of differently abled students, up to and including post-secondary programming, known as transitions. Now, these programs in particular are not required for graduating high school seniors to attend, but schools must extend these services through age 21. Okay. Here's something in particular that I think is really interesting about the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA for short. There are specific assurances that are provided to students, their families, and are required of the community surrounding. But most people don't realize how good of an idea it really is. As mentioned, my name is Dr. Deshauna Reed, and I am a former classroom special education teacher with nearly 2 decades of experience at all levels of education. I began my career in education in the preschool program for children with disabilities, or PPCD. In 2021, I decided that I was going to make a rather bold decision and step out of my role as a campus administrator at the secondary level to re-enter the classroom, and none other than post-secondary transitions. Seemed appropriate to bookend my K-12 career in that way. And there was something in particular that became abundantly clear to me in that year. I have a rather uncomfortable reality to share with all of you. As schools, we unfortunately missed the mark in terms of meeting the needs of differently abled students, particularly at the secondary level. You see, these programs are designed to help students develop post-secondary goals and achieve them so that they do have a plan, kind of like the one that you and I just discussed about our high school journey and what it would look like for us beyond the confines of school. The challenge, however, for many special education staff is doing so in a silo. Let me introduce you to one of my students. We'll call him SC. Now, SC was a beautiful, talented, and very excited individual who desperately wanted to become a graphic novelist and designer. Although legally blind and with a minor intellectual impairment, SC excitedly looked forward to one day being able to see his work alongside other great graphic novelists and designers. There was one hitch to that, though. Although his family was very encouraging and welcomed the idea of bringing him to that point, they had no idea where to even begin because no one had ever exposed them to the process. I wish that I could tell you that SC's experience is an isolated one, but it isn't. SC was just one of many transition students finding themselves at the end of their high school career unsure of where the road for them would lead. They had no access and real understanding of how to even connect with any of the resources in the community. They never saw themselves really in post-secondary education because they had no idea how to even get on the path, let alone knock on that opportunity door. So I did what I do. I did my research and I came up with a plan. But in doing so, I also wondered if my experience was an isolated one in terms of special education teachers providing transition services to differently abled students. And that was when I devised a study. This study was comprised of case studies from several campus special education teachers and professionals, as well as some community-based resources. I wanted to determine where we were in particular missing the mark in terms of capitalizing on all that IDEA had to offer. Because it sounds like a really good idea, right? So I asked them 5 questions. And in asking them these 5 questions, I was able to devise a specific and very targeted way of being able to improve the way that we address post-secondary transitions. I call them the concentric circles of support. The concentric circles of support are pretty straightforward. There are 3 that surround and envelop each of our students, both differently abled and neurotypical. There's the peripheral, the medial, and the core. At each of these, there are very particular elements that are essential to capitalize on in order to truly guide students through the process of achieving post-secondary success. At the peripheral, we have connections with society and professional support. My apologies. These slides just keep showing the same thing. Here we are at the goodness gracious, at the peripheral circle. Welcome to TEDx, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, nonetheless, in the peripheral circle, we have societal and professional support. This is where workplace exposure and experiences are most important. Now, I mentioned to you what I did inside the classroom, but what I failed to mention to you is what I now do. You see, on the outside, I am an educational consultant, author, researcher, and I also provide employment consulting to differently abled adults looking to find competitive, integrated employment in the community. Establishing connections with employers early on, much like could have been done with SC, would have provided him with employer-employee relationships and connected him with the greater community of individuals in his field of interest, graphic design. Engagement and inclusion is hugely important. You see, inclusion isn't just a noun or a feel-good idea that we can do in schools for those kids. Inclusion is a verb. It's the actionable steps that we take to bring idea to life. It's the connections that we make with students' families and their siblings. It's the connections that we utilize between institutions to help move forward the needle in terms of meeting the needs of not just individuals with differing abilities, but society at large. Policy advocacy is hugely important, and very few of us realize how much we truly impact the policies that ultimately impact the differently abled members of our community. So advocating on behalf of greater accessibility, equity, and inclusion in our workspaces and in all places is what also can guide us to improve post-secondary outcomes for the differently abled. Moving into the medial circle. This is where I lived. Educational institutions and communities. So in our communities, we have opportunities for connection through organizations, such as one that I'm a part of, called Siblings with a Mission. I happen to be the youngest sibling of an individual with differing abilities. My older sister, Adrienne, is with autism. She was diagnosed back in the 1960s, well before IDEA was even a concept. And back then, there were far fewer options in terms of offerings for families like ours. And so our connectedness to educational institutions and communities was hugely important. In order to do so, we must have much better teacher development opportunities, as well as connectedness to state agencies, which is also a challenge, because in the classroom, we're typically siloed. And so having the opportunity to connect with outside resources and bring those resources back into the classroom is hugely important in terms of not just meeting the needs inside those walls, but extending them beyond. Networking is key. I tell my students now, as an adjunct professor, networking is your key to every door you meet. Connecting yourself with others early on and often is crucial, not just for you, but for them. There was one famous person that once said, if I have an idea and you have an idea, we each only have one. But if I share mine with you and you share yours with me, now we each have two. So networking is hugely important in guiding students through this process, especially differently abled students, allows them to connect early and often with those who ultimately they will meet again on the outside. And now to the core, the centermost point. This is where family support comes in. Our families are our first teachers. Whether our experiences with them are positive or not so, they do teach us a great deal about the world that we live in. They shape the lens through which we see the world. They also offer a great deal of financial support, and for differently abled students, this also means legal support in terms of guardianship, powers of attorney, and supported decision-making. Obtaining these early and often is crucial in assisting differently abled students with understanding what their options are once they do enter post-high school world. Mentorship is an also highly underutilized resource in terms of preparing differently abled students to move beyond the classroom. So establishing mentorships with individuals in the differing fields of interest would have been incredibly beneficial, especially for SC and other students very much like him. When we put these three together and we imagine that the concentric circles of support are like ripples and waves that move out from and back into the core, the centermost important piece of all of this, the formidable, differently abled individual, utilizing this as a means of connection is a no-brainer and a much better idea. So, as we stand at the intersection between education and empathy, it is all of our responsibility to serve our role on each one of those concentric circles of support for post-secondary transitions and readiness. I can tell you this about SC. He did go on to a community college, and he did get his certificate and begin working on his website. His graphic novel is coming soon. And so by willing to seek out information and advice from others in my position and utilize the experience that I had, I was able to help guide him to a career he never thought he'd actually have. And so I urge you to do your part. Activate your community. Consider where you lie, either on the peripheral, medial, or core of these concentric circles, and turn inclusion from a noun into a verb. As author James Clear once said, every action you take is a vote in favor of the person you wish to be. And that's the best idea.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. Thank you, Dr. Reed. Education is very important. When my mom used to tell me, you're going to school, you're going to college, you're going to school. I'm like, but I don't want to. Yes, you are. I say, but you're not in school. I don't know why I said that. She had an action for my words that day. I never said that again. So now things was, you do as I say, not as I do. So your family do raise you, and your family does guide you. However, you don't have to do what your family did or what your family hasn't done. You are your own person. And we know that education is very important, whether post-secondary, whether you go on to get your doctorate, your PhD, whatever you decide to do, if you don't do nothing else, at least finish high school, right? Okay, our next speakers are Dr. Jennifer Rosh and Emily Hall, from funneling to flourishing. Dr. Rosh has worked in online education for over 10 years. She holds a doctorate degree in higher education leadership. She helps others with faculty redesign with their own educational courses. Emily Hall is a dedicated academic advisor with a special focus on social injustice and leadership. She holds a bachelor's in human services and business administration. Ms. Hall is committed to making a positive impact on our community. I present to you all Dr. Jennifer Roche, and Emily Hall.
Education is like a funnel, but messy to demonstrate on stage and small. So Emily has created a video for us to demonstrate. Well, that was unexpected. Sometimes education is like the video. We carefully select our main theories and we gather together really good research documentation and even some examples. We mix it all into a course and we pour it out to our students. As teachers, we hope that our students will take all that information in and their brains will just absorb it all in just like a sponge. However, we don't always know how it impacts our students. And honestly, we know that some of our students just do not love our subjects as much as we do.
I teach a required liberal arts course for upperclassmen. My course is designed to develop student and servant leaders who want to go out and change the world for the better. In my course, I had research, theories, specific examples. I thought I had plenty of learning materials for my students to understand the concepts that were necessary in my course. It wasn't until I got their discussion board posts, their papers, and finally their course reviews that I had to ask myself a few hard reflective questions.
What did the course reviews say that the students gave you, Emily?
Well, my students expressed to me that they wanted to do well in my course, but they just didn't understand how the content related to them or their lives. As a teacher who's passionate about social justice and servant leadership, this was heartbreaking and disappointing. Here's what they said.
The majority of this course did not resonate with me on any level. I didn't feel like I gained anything from it. My favorite methods were the discussions and the videos that the instructor included in the modules as examples.
What can I do to engage my students and show them the importance of social justice and servant leadership?
This is how I met Emily, frustrated. I'm an instructional designer, and my job is to work with teachers to redesign their courses, to incorporate teaching best practices, and engage students in learning. We talked about the fact that we needed to cover these key concepts in 7-week classes fully online, which is a challenge if you've never done it, I promise. But we knew it was worth the redesign, and we knew it was worth it because we could focus on the students' interests and their volunteer passions. And so we started working on that process to try and redesign that course. But we also knew that we were facing some challenges along the way. And one of the things was that we knew that this course had to be focused on servant leadership and that we had to also focus on the students' interest in social justice. We knew that we had to focus on a significant cause that was worth fighting for and we could personalize throughout that course for our students.
So, in the first 2 weeks of class, we focused on the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This covers basic human rights like the right to have a residence or to get paid for a working job. We then talked about the history of social justice, issues of bias, privilege, the various biases that affect all people to some degree, such as ableism, ageism, racism, just to name a few ways in which people discriminate against each other. After talking about these concepts, my students wrote a critical reflection on what they would learn over the first 2 weeks.
In weeks 3 and 4, we ended up with, in weeks 3 and 4, the students studied leadership styles, organizational culture, emotional intelligence, and volunteerism in national and state organizations. They studied these topics and then they discussed them. And then the students wrote their own servant leadership theories and styles and discussed how they were going to develop their leadership skills even further. These were all great topics, but there was one important question we had to answer. How do we know that the students can use these skills to become servant leaders and go out and fight for social justice in the world?
So, in weeks 5 and 6, we talked about social change action plans. My students actually created their own plans to enact change in their communities. Their plans included communication strategies, an initial budget, and by the end of it, they had a whole entire plan that they could take out to investors or supporters.
And some of your student plans ended up being?
An after-school sports program to build peace and discourage gang membership, community suicide prevention and awareness through social media posts and podcasts, fighting bullying in schools with monthly meetings and support from school staff, and even a pop-up pantry event to help community food insecurity and awareness. And that was just the beginning. After creating these plans, they then created a pitch presentation to share.
And in week 7, they did a pitch presentation, and we end up moving forward into education is like a funnel. If we combined our key concepts and student engagement through personalized learning, critical thinking, and real-world problem solving, we can inspire our students to change the world and go out and build a better future. However, we have to ask one more hard reflective question. Emily, what did the students say in the course reviews?
The course reviews after the redesign were night and day. The light is shining now, and my students finally understand the importance of social justice, servant leadership, and can even create a plan to enact change in their own communities. Here's a few examples of what my students said after the course redesign. My biggest takeaway has been realizing just how powerful servant leadership, volunteerism, and good organizational culture really is. When done right, these 3 practices can make positive social change and justice within many different communities.
Even if most of them are local to us, they still mean something to each of us who want to fight that good fight. From the LGBT community to local creeks, there are battles to be fought and organizations to be built. One roadblock at a time, we can make a difference.
Our history shows us that social justice is attainable, and I hope to continue learning the routes that have been taken in the past while looking forward to an even more hopeful future.
Being a part of a team, classroom, or just a workplace where everyone is appreciated and thought of is so important to me. By creating a welcoming environment for everyone, you can also be a more effective leader.
Ultimately, the key to improving my servant leadership skills is to seek out opportunities to serve others. Thanks to this course, I'm confident that I'll be a more effective leader and make a real difference in my community and beyond.
As educators, I truly believe that we can inspire our students to change the world and believe that they can. We can build a course that teaches them how to become servant leaders for their whole lives and helps them to plan for social change. All colleges and universities need to offer a required course like this one to build future civic leaders.
So, as you can see, education is like a funnel. We take students and their big dreams in, we inspire them, and we develop their leadership skills. We pour out servant leaders into the community who want to stay connected and build a better tomorrow. Our future is held in their capable hands and caring hearts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ross and Emily Hall. What is that saying that we say all the time that is really true? Our children are our future, right? So we got to make sure that they are getting the best possible education that we can deliver them, whether we're in schools or whether we're at home. We got to make sure that we do that. So thank you all. Okay, last but not least, we have last of our 10 inspiring, phenomenal speakers. We have Wendy Louise Johnson, balancing the scales. Wendy is an individual that is on a mission to inspire each one of us. She is a full-time student right here at Columbia College. She also works for the South Carolina Department of Transportation full-time, and Wendy maintains a 4.0 GPA. Her talk is dedicated to about healthy relationships. We are going to hear her speak about a lot of different things. Let her come and speak to us in more detail. Wendy Louise Johnson.
Can you imagine a time when our ancestors communicated their deepest fears and triumphs, not with words, but through vivid hand gestures and tones around a campfire? A time when the anxiety of going hungry and the thrill of survival were conveyed without PowerPoint or cell phones, but through the raw intensity of human connection. How did these ancient storytellers teach us the power of empathy and shared experiences? And what can we learn from them to cultivate an egalitarian relationship? Our Paleolithic ancestors experienced a relative egalitarian existence because whether they were child-rearing, gathering berries and leafy greens, or hunting, they were mutually interdependent upon each other. All members' contributions were considered of equal value. Relationships were egalitarian because of this mutual interdependence. Relative gender equality was experienced. They did not accumulate wealth or resources. When people learned how to nurture plants, instead of simply collecting them, they also learned to capture animals, breed them, and domesticate them, rather than hunt them. This required a lot less energy from humans and freed them up for other things. Over the centuries, this has led to the development of agriculture, which led to a significant growth in population. As a result, the concept of ownership developed along with the anxieties that rendered competition for the best land to cultivate crops and herd livestock. The impact of this shift from hunting and gathering to agriculture led to the accumulation of resources. Accumulation of resources by a select few led to unequal distribution and economic inequities amongst other members of society. These inequities created anxieties that were a catalyst for utilitarian relationships based on need rather than want. These practices are still in effect today, despite our technological advances and abundance, with people seeking partners with greater abundance because their talents and contributions are undervalued. Social inequalities and exploitation also ensued, along with associating gender with the value of societal contributions. The value of contributions associated with a feminine gender was lowered, rendering people of a feminine gender dependent on the masculine gender for basic survival. Now that land is property belonging to another human, we can no longer forage for our own berries for survival because that would be considered theft. We are compelled to seek utilitarian relationships and alliances because we are no longer able to gather our own berries for survival. Have we surrendered the authenticity of human connection, trading genuine bonds for utilitarian relationships simply because the age-old act of gathering our own berries for survival has been replaced by a world driven by convenience and compromise? This disparity in perceived value of contributions led to relationships between partners becoming dependent on one another for perceived needs rather than egalitarian mutual want or a shared emotional connection. Though humans were no longer being chased by saber-toothed tigers, the advent of agriculture brought other anxieties. Property ownership and protection of resource accumulation was of great concern. With property ownership came patriarchal anxieties over inheritance, which led to the domination of one sex over another, and even landowner over laborer. With agriculture, we were still anxiety-based, with those anxieties rooted in fear of paternity, as now we had to concern ourselves with land inheritance. Goals shifted from daily hunter-gatherer tasks to property accrual for cultivation. Cultivation of land led to accumulation, and of course, property ownership, then competition for resources. As we fast forward to the Industrial Revolution, both men and women came off the land they were working and into the factories. Men, women, and children had to adjust to a stark contrast in daily routines. They were no longer working to the natural rhythms of the Earth's seasons and sunrises, but rather clocking in as the whistle blew to take orders from someone else. Both men and women were stripped of social value. Furthermore, they were subjected to physical and psychological threats by factory managers if they did not adhere to the factory's rules regarding absenteeism and tardiness. Again, we see the theme of anxiety-driven motivators. Keep in mind that at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, most places did not have HR departments that regulated the treatment of workers. Conditions were oppressive, with people risking physical injury, including loss of limbs, if not their lives, with a multitude of threats they were constantly exposed to. People were not psychologically safe, able to work at their own pace, or take breaks if they were not feeling well. Factories rendered mass production of goods for maximum profit, but at the cost of the time and toil of the men and the women who worked in them. Because family structures changed, with the social expectation being that of a nuclear family, no longer did multiple generations live under the same roof. Although there was a shift in social expectation for women to remain in the domestic sphere, with domestic work being increasingly devalued, if you were an unmarried woman, it was nearly impossible to remain at home without working. Unmarried women were expected to support themselves by taking low-wage factory jobs or taking a job in domestic service for another family. Because domestic work was associated with the feminine gender, it was considered of lower value and hence lower pay. The problem with this dynamic is that it was almost impossible for a woman to be single and support herself on the lower wages. Working class men generally made lower wages as well and could not support an entire family on their own. This created a plethora of problems, resulting in men and women forming utilitarian relationships or alliances in the guise of marriage and relationships. Even with both partners having to pull wages to support a household and family, the partner who brought home the most financially had the most power and the final say in major decisions. A utilitarian relationship is anxiety-based. A utilitarian relationship is driven by financial and material need. A utilitarian relationship is anxiety-based because of the element of need, as in survival mode. An egalitarian relationship is one driven by mutual desire. In other words, two partners mutually desire to be with each other, and there is nothing to be gained materialistically from either partner because resources are abundant or available for both individuals, whether they choose to remain together or eventually part ways. Not all utilitarian relationships are bad. If both partners are happy, open, and honest with their arrangement, and no one is harmed physically or psychologically, then people have that right. However, wouldn't you rather be wanted than needed? The problem with utilitarian relationships became more evident with the rise of criminal domestic violence rates skyrocketing upon the quarantine that resulted from the COVID-19 pandemic. During the quarantine of 2020, people discovered that they did not like their partners. Before the quarantine, people had a buffer routine where they could diffuse from the workday during the drive home or stop by their favorite spot during happy hour. They could go grocery shopping for dinner items or work out at the gym. Partners generally spent limited amounts of their day with each other. Keep in mind that sleep does not count as time spent together because partners are not actively interacting or engaged with each other. If we assume most people get at least 7 hours of sleep during a 24-hour cycle, the jump in direct time spent together increased dramatically. Even if partners were previously amicable with each other during their interactions, the constant one-on-one time of being confined to a residential space or property led to increased interaction and unavoidable communication, including nonverbal communication. A phenomenon referred to as the shadow pandemic by the United Nations served as a wake-up call as to what is really going on with our societal structure regarding relationship dynamics. Why are people with each other if they're going to escalate to violence? People crave time with their loved ones in the form of vacations, dining out, and sometimes just togetherness spent at home. If we crave time with our partners, then why did so many get hurt by them during this time of togetherness? That's not love, that's need. The financially dependent partner is beholden to the decisions made by the partner bringing in the most income. Partners who make more financial contributions will usually use that as a basis for making most of the important decisions regarding the household and child rearing. The partner with the greatest financial abundance has the most power, leading to inequity and discontent. Following the lockdown of 2020, a report issued in 2021 by the United Nations, from which the American Journal of Emergency Medicine then reported that CDV incidence increased globally by 25 to 33%. I believe if most people were in egalitarian relationships, where partners wanted to be with each other rather than needed to be with each other, there would have been and would currently be fewer incidents of criminal domestic violence. Financially dependent partners find it very difficult to leave abusive relationships. In fact, women will commonly leave one abusive relationship to enter another relationship that eventually becomes abusive on some level. Additionally, children are negatively impacted by the influence of utilitarian relationships. If not witnesses to abuses, they are incidentally taught that utilitarian relationships are normal and the status quo. I came to an epiphany several years ago when former President Barack Obama passed legislation to legalize same-sex marriages. I was always disenchanted with the concept of marriage because I believed it was an antiquated carryover of one person having ownership of another in patriarchal domination. However, the epiphany occurred to me when President Obama legalized same-sex marriages. I thought to myself, hey, now that's an egalitarian relationship. That's an egalitarian marriage. And I started to change my previous ideas of the concept of marriages into other committed relationships. The legalization of same-sex marriages is what led me to consider the possibility that marriages and other committed relationships have the potential for egalitarianism. In egalitarian relationships, everyone benefits. The connection between partners who share mutual adoration toward one another is the most desirable outcome. Anxiety is alleviated because neither partner has to fear loss. A partner should not enter into a relationship with the fear of financial loss. I imagine a day when the concept of alimony or suing for half of a partner's retirement is obsolete because both partners are paid a fair wage in the first place. Then there's the issue of the uneven distribution of the world's wealth. Per Kenneth Guest in Cultural Anthropology, a toolkit for a global age, 99% of the world's resources are held by 1% of the population. Gender notwithstanding, people should be paid a living wage for their talents. When people are paid a living wage, regardless of their gender, this sets the stage for egalitarian partnerships, marriages, connections, and even egalitarian platonic friendships. I believe there is abundance to be had by all, and we need to figure out a way together to make sure the world's resources are accessible to everyone. I think we are technologically advanced enough in our society currently that we can officially move away from anxiety-based motives and focus on a purpose in life that renders enjoyment and creativity. I think every human in the world can have this and should have this. We need to do something now to ensure that generations going forward live in a society where we work together rather than against each other under the fallacious assumption that there's not enough to go around. I've personally been on the receiving end of domestic violence. For the longest time, I was ashamed to say I was in a utilitarian relationship out of more of a financial need than anything else. I perceived myself as being a talented, hard worker historically, yet could not with my earnings enjoy nor afford a residence of my own, cover utilities, basic upkeep, put food in my mouth and in the mouths of my children. I know a lot of other women have also been in this situation, and for reasons rooted in shame, are discouraged from talking about having a financial need because of social stigmas. I put myself out here in a spirit of vulnerability in hopes that anyone out there who has ever experienced the same knows that they are not alone, and they know that they are not the only one who has had these feelings and experienced the shame and the trauma. If I accomplish nothing else today but to help someone else feel better, then I've done my job here. The path to truly fulfilling relationships lies in recognizing and valuing the diverse talents and skills of all genders by dismantling the barriers that prevent fair compensation for labor. We pave the way for a future where anxiety no longer governs our relationships. Instead, we can embrace a world where abundance, happiness, and genuine connections are accessible to everyone. Let us work together to build a society where creativity flourishes, where fear and insecurity are replaced by understanding and support, and where love thrives unencumbered by societal constraints. Together, we can create a future where every individual is empowered to contribute their unique talents, leading to a world filled with fulfilling relationships and encounters, regardless of their duration. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. That was great. That was very impactful. So we all need to make sure, again, that we're doing our part, balancing the scales, loving each other no matter what. If we do that, I'm sure that everything else will fall in place. All right. Each one of you is going to get a survey from TEDx asking you about the event. Make sure that you give great remarks about your MC. And just answer those questions truthfully. You will get that in your email. We are at the end, and it is my farewell. Again, my name is Shawn Stewart Camps. It has been a great pleasure to be with you all today. You can catch me on Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, and on most Sundays, I am going to be broadcasting live from the Bank of America. Wait, no, that's in my dream, so no, that don't count. But thank you. So now, without further ado, I am going to introduce our speaker of the day, who is going to do the closing remarks. That is Dr. John H. Dozer, president of Columbia College, South Carolina. Let's give him a round of applause.
She oversold, and I'm not getting ready to deliver that. But please, let's give Shawn a rousing applause for her hosting. Our speakers also worked incredibly hard to make today possible, and I must say that I'm certainly inspired. Let's also give them a really big round of applause for what they've done. Really, I'm here out of great appreciation. I'm so appreciative of our sound and images folks for making sure that the streaming and video that you saw happened without a glitch. Thank you to them. I also want to thank the many students, faculty, and staff who committed a great deal of time to make sure that today also happened well. Maybe the biggest thanks to Dr. Melissa Brennan, to Ashton Peterson, and Mr. Richmond Indy. They really... They're today's heroes. And of course, our student affairs team, Ms. Emily Wilson, and our marketing and events teams for all of the leadership and support for making today possible. The thing is that you've now heard from 10 amazing speakers. We hope that, like me, you're also inspired. We hope that you learned something that you'll take back to your sphere of influence. And we hope that this only motivates you to stay connected. It is my pleasure to be here today, and I wish you the warmest of greetings as you begin this weekend. Thank you for being here at Columbia College, and have a wonderful weekend.